Hey, everybody, welcome to Paratruth Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. My name is Justin. If you guys are tuning in for the first time, we are definitely glad to have you here with us. If you'd like to call in during the show, phone number here is 914-205-5558. You can also hop into our chat line at the bottom of your screen if you're listening on a computer. And you can also click on the Skype call-in as well if you have to, or if you want to call in and ask questions. We also are proud to announce that paratruthradio.com is live and active. If you guys want to check that out, we are happy to have that up and going. Hello, Eric.
What's up?
Not much. Just
I heard. I was listening actually to the live version, not my host version, a little bit there. So, but I tried, man. I tried to get on before the intro ended, and then of course my computer freezes up.
Well, the funny thing is I switched things and lost connection with Skype as well, and luckily enough, just as the intro ended, it started. It got reconnected, so I was happy about that. So, folks, for you guys that are listening in, like I just said, we just got paratruthradio.com up and running, thanks to our Indiegogo campaign and the people that donated to us, which was Lori Roan, Debbie Skurback, Geraldine Kozak, who has been a loyal listener from day one, Aaron Skurback, oh God, am I forgetting anybody?
No one that I know.
I don't think so. I think that's everybody. And we are going to have a thank you episode where we call those people to thank them and get their feedback as well. So I will get that announced here in the next couple days so those people can be ready and prepared. And then we have a great guest on with us. Today we have on Linda Godfrey, author of American Monsters. Linda, how are you this evening?
Hi, I'm great. How are you guys?
Good.
We are fantastic. So for those of our listeners that haven't heard of you or heard of the book, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I have been researching unknown strange animals, especially the ones that look like upright wolves for some reason or not, for 22 years. I started out as a reporter, and after 10 years at the newspaper and continuing interest in the story that I broke in 1991-92 called The Beast of Bray Road, I decided that I needed to write a book about it. 16 books later, I'm still getting reports from people, 1 to 3 a week. And this sort of blows my mind. And the interesting thing is that from the very beginning, I was receiving reports on not just the upright unknown canines that some people like to call werewolves, but big birds, Bigfoot, all kinds of other lake monsters, sea creatures, you name it. People seem to sense that these things were all related somehow. And I began to think, well, there really is a huge amount of these things, not just from my own reports, but knowing what other members of other colleagues of mine had put together. I knew there was a lot out there, and that the average American really has no idea what their friends and neighbors are seeing in their backyards or the woods or the forests, partly because most people, I believe the greatest share of experiencers never report it to anybody. They don't want to be thought crazy or whatever.
Right.
So I wanted to write a book that showed the breadth and the depth of the number of creatures that are seen and the weirdness of the creatures that people are seeing that really science doesn't have any explanation for. I mean, you go and take a zoology class and you're not going to learn anything about wolves that walk upright or 8-foot primate bipedal species, covered with fur in North America. a bat squatch with bat-like wings and a 20-foot wingspan and a furry hominid center. Those things just are not being discussed or talked about in any kind of mainstream science. So I think the solution to every mystery starts with awareness of what's out there. And people begin to, put things together and become more encouraged to come forward themselves. And to me, that's how we get to the next step. So that was my inspiration for writing American Monsters.
Okay. Now, one of the very first things that you said there was you mentioned werewolves. And on this show, werewolves is by far one of our favorite topics.
Yep.
Somehow,
everybody loves a werewolf.
Yeah, and I don't know how it is, but we have episodes where we're talking about demons or witchcraft or something like that, and somehow werewolf comes up, and we don't know how. It just happens. We rabbit trail a lot on the show. But with that being said, one of the very first chapters that I was immediately drawn to was your chapter on basically werewolves. And there's a particular section entitled Bulletproof Beast and the Invincibility Question. Now, as I was reading that, I noticed something very common with some of the descriptions, I guess, as to the encounters. I mean, it has been said that werewolves, or these particular creatures, whatever they really are, tend to be aggressive, and very aggressive at that. With that being said, there has never really been any officially documented attacks on humans or anything else.
Not in my records, no. I mean, there are a few people who claim that, but in 22 years, I've not seen that at all. Hundreds and hundreds of reports. People think they're going to get eaten, but the creature always stops and turns around and runs into the nearest cover, no matter how threatening and aggressive it has been.
Right. Now, I mean, do you think, just in your own opinion, that it's more so the people's fear playing into how aggressive this creature really is? Like, maybe it's not really aggressive, they just think it is because they're so afraid? Or do you think it really is aggressive and it's almost trying to show signs to get the person to back down and back away? It's not really going to attack, but kind of like a growl or a rattlesnake shaking its rattler. Yeah,
a lot of the things that they do have correlations to what you'd expect from some animal defending its territory. It's like territorial aggression. This is my space. You stay out, because it will, just the very act of rising on its hind legs and posturing. A lot of it, bears will do that. Some other animals will do that because by doing that they make themselves bigger and.
Right.
And, that's sort of a natural thing. But what the other ones don't do is then run at you on their hind legs. Or, sometimes it'll have this deep and throaty growl. Sometimes it will stare at the people and they feel that they're getting some sort of subliminal message, not like a voice in their head or in the King's English, but, something that is commanding them to leave or telling them that it's superior or that it could jump on their car. It has jumped at cars and scratched them, according to witnesses. It has chased people on foot. And those are pretty aggressive acts.
Right.
And it's snarling, of course, and they can see fangs and claws. And so there's a fear factor as well, that I'm sure the creature intends. But what it's up to, I'm not really sure. And you mentioned, the talk about demons and that sort of thing.
Right.
And there is a small percentage of the sightings. I would say 90% or so. The creatures don't display anything that couldn't be explained away by natural means. Because just about any mammal can walk on its hind legs if it's motivated or trained to do so. If it has to, it's just not usually done. But then there's that smaller percentage that is unnatural in some way. Oftentimes they're taller than the usual. The usual reported height for what I call the dogman or the upright canid is 5.5 to 7 feet. And these other ones will be reported as more like 8 feet with glowing red eyes, whereas normal canine eye shine is yellow-green. Sometimes they'll be seen with more of a human-like physique, which is unusual because the other 90% are, they'll say, well, it just looked like a big wolf. Sometimes they'll say a wolf on steroids, and that might be explained because if it's using its hind limbs in a way that it's not used to, it's also using its forelimbs. You're often seen carrying big chunks of deer and things like that. So it's going to have muscles in unanticipated places on its limbs, that would normally never be developed if it just remained on 4 feet all the time.
Right.
So there's like the 90%, and then there's the smaller percent, and I don't know what those are, and it may be a combination of other things, and I don't claim to know anything about, demonic types or the skinwalkers or anything like that. I don't know that. I'm sure there are some people who have good information on it, but it's just not an area I want to get into or need to get into. It's sort of out of my league. I just put those in the possibly supernatural realm and leave that to be figured out later by, someone who maybe is an expert in that field.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of people who like to play tricks these days. And some of those, and some of those chicks are dressing up as a werewolf or Sasquatch, or you name it. With that being known, why do you think? And I know not everyone does this, but a few people that you had talked about in your book have drawn their weapons and even fired upon this so-called creature. What do you think drives them to finally come out and just, pull the trigger?
Well, in the few cases, really, it hasn't happened a lot, but when it does, and most people really, that are out walking or fishing or just, enjoying the day, whatever, are not armed. But then you get down to some fishermen or hunters or experienced trail hikers who go way in deep somewhere, and they may have, a semi-automatic on them or something like that, and they even don't unless they feel threatened. It's always in a case where they encounter this creature and the creature starts making a move on them, or it's advancing toward them, or it's following them very, very closely, and they're really in fear of being jumped, or it goes after their dog, that kind of thing.
Right.
Those are the few people that shoot, and normally it's nothing. It's more of a panic thing than anything else because it's not like they're out hunting these creatures. I don't know anybody who really does that, hunts them with intent to shoot, and I always discourage that because there always is that slim chance that it's a human, or perhaps it's a protected species. Maybe it's a large timber wolf that has adapted to walk upright, and then you're guilty of you're in big trouble with the government if you shoot an endangered species. So it's not something that most people would do lightly, and the few times it's happened, people felt that they were defending themselves.
I think that's a pretty good way of figuring things out, too, is if you're shooting at something and it's still living and running away, then it couldn't necessarily be human or the humans that we know of.
Right. So. Yeah, because some of these people have been certain that they hit these things. And I think I also mentioned in that chapter the same thing happens with Bigfoot, too. They both seem to have this unusual feature of, it's like Superman. The bullets bounce off their chest and they just keep on running. So that's, very baffling. And I'm not the only person who's collected those stories. They show up, in other places all the time. So it's not an isolated sort of incident.
Right. Well, I'd like to talk more about this after our break, which I believe we're taking now, correct?
Yep, we're going to take our first break.
Right.
And this is actually one of the bigger portions for this show just because we are huge into the dogmen and werewolf type sightings as well as Bigfoot. Not that we agree that Bigfoot is a real thing per se, but we'll get into that shortly. Folks, you're listening to Paratruth Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. If you guys want to call in and ask questions to our guest, Linda Godfrey, you can call 914-205-5558, or you can hop in our chat line and ask the questions that way as well. We are going to have Eric's Random Fact of the Day, as well as some quick commercials, and we will be right back.
This is David Montaigne, author of End Times in 2019, and you are listening to Paratruth Radio.
Now, Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
In the early 1940s, Walt Disney and his brother Roy raised $17 million and struck a $6 million part ownership and a once-a-week television show deal with ABC TV to create the first ever theme park. That theme park is known as Disneyland, and a little over 1 year later opened with 18 attractions on a day known as Black Sunday. Now, the reason it was called Black Sunday was due to a series of calamities that particular day. They included a 7-mile freeway backup, rides that broke down, and, due to extremely high temperatures, a number of shoes that were lost in melting Main Street asphalt. However, the second day passed without as many mishaps, and within 7 weeks, Disneyland had welcomed its 1 millionth visitor. And as we know, Disneyland today is one of the most frequently visited places on Earth.
This was Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me.
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today
The only thing I didn't learn today
The only thing I didn't learn
is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, sublimely elegant here as always, and you are listening to Paratruth Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. My name's Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And we are talking to Linda Godfrey, author of American Monsters.
Mm-hmm. Now, right before the break, we were discussing why people tend to draw their weapons and fire them on werewolves that they claim to have come up against. Now, one of the things that are very interesting, Linda, is that, as you said before the break, these bullets seem to bounce off of these creatures or have no effect on them whatsoever. And with that said, there's absolutely no blood trail. Now, this may be kind of far-fetched and going out there, but you were saying that, in the first part, you were saying that they're almost like Superman in that sense. But is there also a possibility that these creatures, going back to this whole demonic thing that we were talking about earlier, are more of spiritual beings of some sort, and perhaps these bullets pass through them, and people just think that they're physical beings?
Well, that's another whole theory that's out there, and it's got several different variations. And right away from the beginning, I was trying to interview Native American elders and figuring they would know and have these things in their lore, their their sacred stories. And what I've been told, and this is not the belief of every Native American tribe, of course, but a fair number believe that both the Dogman and the Bigfoot are basically in nature spiritual creatures, that they know where, in their terms, the spirit doors are. We might call these portals or wormholes or gateways to someplace else, to what they call the spirit world, we call maybe another dimension. And that this is where they come from, and the reason we never find their bodies is that this is where they go back to, if they're injured or hurt.
Right.
And they may even, go back there to reproduce. The feeling I get from hearing these stories and then other things too, because there's another competing theory that says there's something known as the spirit matrix, which is like this one giant organism or entity that lives on another plane than we do, that can somehow interact with our human consciousness and manifest itself in these different shapes and forms that are almost like things we have in our world, but not quite, just a little bit different. And now, sorry, I got myself off on a tangent. I can't remember what point I was going to make. But there are these different types of theories that do think that there's something from somewhere else, and we're not really dealing with an exact flesh and blood animal. And of course, there are two very strong camps, especially in the Bigfoot field, where people either believe that they're completely flesh and blood, and that we need to study them and get them put into our mainstream biology and zoology, so that they can be a protected species. And then the other camp that says, no, there's something else, at least part of the time. They may be real when they're here, but, I know what I was going to get at, is that both of these things seem to require energy. That their main thing that they do here is either eat plants or animals, or some people believe that they're sort of like psychic vampires. The reason they want to scare people and act aggressive is because they can feed off our emotional reaction. So that's another theory, And again, I just put these all out. I don't claim to know which is right. I get reports that can indicate both things, and it's really hard to say. And for me, people always want me to choose one or the other, and I just don't feel like we still have enough knowledge of these things to say one way or the other. It's not like we've got, wonderful one-on-one, even great video footage of both of them, or one in front of us that we can, lead out like Harry and the Hendersons and go a little farther than they did and introduce it to the world, and let it go run back wherever it was. It's not like we have that.
Right.
So to me, the jury stays out. But I will say that the Native American paradigm of exiting and entering the spirit world, coming here and being fully corporeal and physical while it's in this world, but being able to go back when it wants to, would explain a lot of the very strange things about these sightings.
All right, we have a caller who wants to ask a question. Area code 701-989-0986. You're on air. Who are we talking to?
Hello.
Cameron, how's it going, bud?
Pretty good. I wanted to call in and comment on her theory about the possibility that they feed off of our emotions and energy. And I agree that that is a very possible thing. Like we've talked about before, it's possible. I know this isn't in her curriculum, but like demonic presences, and it's not something she studies a lot. But I know that, the demonic presences, and I know they feed off of our emotions, and it can appear in anything they want to scare us in our worst possible fears. So I think that, as I've stated before, that is a possibility for this particular thing.
Well, it does definitely explain why they seem to be so intent on hanging around just enough till somebody's really terrified and then they run off.
Right.
It seems like that's all they really want. So I can't toss out that idea. I mean, I don't know how it works for sure, but it does fit the facts of many encounters.
Right.
Yeah,
all right.
that's pretty much all I have to say right now. So.
All right, Cameron. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, one of the most, by far the most famous werewolf case in America is that of the Bray Road Beast. I think, especially anyone in the paranormal community who studies this kind of stuff will always know what the Bray Road Beast is. Even with that, even with that and the claims that have come forth about other sightings around the country, especially within the Appalachian area, we have very little evidence to prove any of it, especially physical evidence in terms of like photos or video. I know I've only seen a couple of so-called footprints, which whether or not they're real or not, I mean, I don't really know. But I know that there was one story in your book, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong at any point here, but I believe he was pointing a gun at this particular creature, and it had no effect on him whatsoever. But the moment he picked up his camera to take a picture, the creature turned around and fled, which would suggest some type of intelligence of this creature, not just some other type of animal. Like, it's almost trying to stay out of the spotlight in some way for some reason. Now, do you think that is indeed intelligence, or do you think it just happened to be a coincidence that this person picked up the camera, maybe made some kind of noise that scared it off?
Yeah, this was the wife actually had the camera in her pocket, and she began to pull it out. She felt that it was, almost warning her not to, and then that's when it fled. So the other thing I can say is that it doesn't seem to be successfully captured on film. There are lots of pictures out there and even videos where people claim that they saw the creature and then took a shot, and what they get is inevitably blurry, or not really acceptable as proof by anyone.
Right.
And that doesn't mean they didn't really see something. It just means it didn't register well on the camera for some reason. And I've also been I actually do a lot of field work. I'm not just sitting in my office all the time. And I've been
I would hope not.
Working. That'd be too boring. I've been working with one property owner for over a year, where we've had all kinds of large canine bipedal prints, taking away deer carcasses and that sort of thing. We can see, we'll have several cameras trained on this area, and everything will show up. You'll see a coyote come. There'll be some vultures. They'll, do what they want to. And then there'll be a period of maybe, often it's about half an hour, when something comes, and in one frame you see the deer lying there, and then about half an hour later, maybe 30 trail cam photos later, the deer is gone, and then we find tracks, and we can see where it carried it over a fence or dragged it out into a field. But whatever does that never shows up. Either the camera stops working, or we get like a strange misty form that obscures the area, and then it's back to normal as soon as that thing is done. Whatever motion where we would see it never appears on the film. And I've done this in other locations too, and that's really curious to me.
Yeah.
And I know that happens also with Bigfoot, and I've also done this at Bigfoot sighting sites with the same results. So it's almost like these two creatures either know how to maybe stand in front of maybe they have one buddy that stands in front of the light or the lens, and the other one does whatever they need to do. Maybe they have some control. Maybe they can smell or sense the camera. I don't know, but it does seem so odd that they never will appear on camera. We have no problem. Other predators, you can have a mountain lion come up and take something, and it doesn't give a darn if the camera's there, if it wants what's there.
Right.
There are plenty of great trail cam photos of mountain lions, bears, you name it. And I've gotten coyotes and the neighbor's pit bull, and all kinds of different things on my trail cam. So I don't know how to explain that.
Well, what's interesting is, well, first and foremost, I mean, you look at just the animal world in general, and you think about sharks, just other animals within the animal kingdom. You're saying that some of these animals will disappear for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden, this carcass is gone. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is I've noticed in a number of different research and watching things on TV is when a bigger predator comes around, the lesser predators, if you will, scatter away from it.
Very much
like when
so.
the big boy comes in, you run.
Right.
Which is very interesting. But also in regards to the blurriness that one might catch on these trail cams, or even just, I mean, you think of the type of cameras that we have these days that people have, and some people are taking shots with pretty good cameras that should not be blurry by any means whatsoever.
Right, exactly.
And I almost question, like, going on back to the spiritual aspect of it. It's almost like this creature is capable of manipulating itself to disorient the picture when it's taken of them. And I know I've seen a few pictures of quote unquote ghosts, which are always, they're never definitive. They're always blurry. They're very misty, as you had just mentioned before too, the mist-like thing. It's really interesting. Actually, I don't know if you know this, or Justin, maybe you know it too. Trail cams, do they usually shoot in night vision or infrared, or do you know any of that by chance?
Well, there are different kinds.
Yeah.
There's the low flash that's not supposed to tip the animals off that the flash is going. I mean, you can get all different kinds depending on how much you want to pay. Okay. Mine are more the low end. I've got a Moultrie that's a couple of years old now, and I actually think that it's malfunctioning, and I think they do get to a point where they don't go off when everything that should trigger it comes along. But when you've got a new camera and it's working fine, and it's just missing these shots, or it's consistently losing out on the money shot. And I use that the term money shot hypothetically. I don't expect that anything like that I take is going to be worth money, but you just have to wonder what's going on. I mean, it just happens so repeatedly with so many people,
right?
That and you read. Many people know about the book Hunt for the Skinwalker Ranch by George Knapp and Colm Kelleher, and that's sort of like the granddaddy of all of these types of events, in that almost anything you can say happens there on a grand scale, on a real, very large scale. And they had the same sort of thing where they started out trying to do these scientific experiments with the very best equipment that you could get of all types, and no matter what they did, it was like they would be anticipated, and film wouldn't be gotten, things wouldn't work. It was like whatever it was just toying with them. So it seems to be kind of a pervasive phenomena that happens wherever people are studying these things.
Now, one question that I have had just listening through here, even though there was a bigger wolf in prehistoric times called the dire wolf, and it was not a bipedal wolf by any means, but do you think that maybe this is remnants of the dire wolf, since they're bigger creatures?
Not really. I mean, I've had some description. It is kind of funny, though. There's another category that I call the giant quadrupeds, where things do appear that look a little bit more like the dire wolf did. They had kind of a ruff around them, a big head. People will describe it as somewhat hyena-like, and they're way bigger than the usual dogmen are described. People will describe them as standing 36 inches to 4 feet high at the shoulder. I mean, that's enormous. And these species do not get up and walk on their hind legs, but yet people see them and they know there's something completely out of the ordinary. And I've been collecting. I actually haven't put many of them in my books or published them because they just don't usually fit in with whatever the issues I'm trying to address. So I'm thinking of just doing a separate publication on those things once I finish the next book I'm working on. So it may be that something like that is there. Maybe we've got time slips that can go back and show these creatures once in a while. And the Skinwalker Ranch had a huge hyena-like creature, by the way, that differed from the other ones that they saw. So they seem to me like that's a different thing again, because the creatures that most people see and report as the upright wolf-like creature, the dogman, what have you, are reported as looking like a German Shepherd or a wolf. They're fairly consistent. Sometimes once or twice, really very few times, people have reported them having a shorter snout that's more like a boxer or some other type of dog, but it's still dog-like, and it would it would fit in. It would just be a different sort of species that interbred with a wolf, maybe, or I mean, who knows where they come from. So I think that it's possible the dire wolf. I don't know if you can really say that there could be a remnant population of them, but that seems more like these strange large quadrupeds than like the upright wolf creatures.
Right. All right. I think we will take our next break, folks. You're listening to Paratruth Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. We've been talking to Linda Godfrey, author of American Monsters. If you guys have any questions during the show, we've got about roughly 22 minutes left. You can call in 914-205-5558, or you can hop into our chat room and ask them that way. We've got your paranormal headlines and a quick commercial, and we will be right back.
And now, Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
Justin here with your Paranormal Headlines. In 1989, an Arizona woman was cleaning a home of a deceased couple, readying it for an estate sale. She found a box of Kodak chrome slides, which she had put aside to keep for herself. It sat unopened until 1999, when the woman decided to open it and found pictures of celebrities such as Bing Crosby, Clark Gable, President Dwight Eisenhower, and oddly enough, a plastic envelope containing 2 slides which looked like they had alien-type figures on the slides. She sent the slides to Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, 2 top experts in the 1947 Roswell UFO crash. They sent the slides to an expert Kodak film historian who verified that the slides were indeed from 1947, and the sleeves that the slides were in dated back to 1942 to 1949. The expert said that the slides did not look like they were tampered with. Carey examined the photos to find an alien body 3 to 4 feet tall with an oversized head and a partially dissected body laying on an army blanket. It is also worthy to note that the alien depicted in the slides is not the typical spaceman of the 1940s or 50s, but rather a representation of the alien life forms that were believed to have crashed and died in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Given the photos unquestionably date to the late 1940s and have not been tampered with, this could be a groundbreaking discovery.
This was a segment of Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You see me around the neighborhood, and you've told me I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm 1 out of every 4 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we could grow up and be whatever we want. I want to grow up and be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry. There's enough food in this country to feed everyone. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 7 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is Bill Hall, author of the book The World's Most Haunted House, and you're listening to Paratruth Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. My name's Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And we've been talking to Linda Godfrey, author of American Monsters. Now, Linda, we've been talking about the dog men and the dog bipedal creatures that you've done research on well in the past as well as in this book. One of the things I wanted to touch on, just because I'm a huge dragon fanatic, so I was excited to see that you had a dragon chapter in this book. And specifically, there's a story that you had covered about a dragon that was spotted in Ohio on a highway that was going from Mount Vernon to Martinsburg. Now, I don't have questions specifically about that case, but the dragon is a creature that in almost every culture there's a story about. Do you think that these are actual giant lizards that can fly? Are these leftover pterosaur dinosaurs that the people are still seeing, which, again, you cover in this book? Are they the same exact thing that people are just thinking look more like a reptile than the dinosaurs did?
People who use the word dragon, they're usually fairly clear to say, I did not think this was some kind of prehistoric bird. They'll say it just reminds them. They seem to be somewhat elongated. Sometimes they see actual scales, which makes it a little bit different, and they just use that term. The one in Ohio, she actually reported it as a quote-unquote bird, but all she could think of when she looked at it was dragon, and she said it was bigger than any bird that she could think of in size, and she said it arched up like you see pictures of dragons with the wings outstretched, and then the wings move slowly down, flapping. And she said the sheer size of it blew my mind. I didn't feel fear, just amazement. It seemed to be in slow motion. And that was just the word, that appeared to her. And I also had this really amazing incident where there were 3 different members of a family in Oconto Falls, Wisconsin. It's kind of up near Green Bay. And there was a son, a daughter, and a mother who saw this creature. A couple of the sightings were together and others were separate, but they saw one large and 2 smaller ones that they couldn't see distinctly, but the large one was close enough that they could see the scales on its belly as it passed over the street lights. And that's pretty close and low. And it flew over in one direction and then later came back from another direction. And they had been so excited they stayed out, and were watching it or watching for it, hoping to see it again. So, these are doubtless one of the more unusual types of sightings. You don't get quite as many of those. There are lots and lots of giant bird sightings of different types, and there are sightings of the ones that people say look like pterodactyls, or they're actually giant pterosaurs would probably be more correct. But, the dragons are unusual, and as you say, they are so ancient and so endemic to every culture. And in many cultures, they weren't evil things. Like, for instance, to the Chinese, they were very benevolent, godlike creatures. And then you go down to South and Middle America, and you have Quetzalcoatl, who was the dragon or snake god that brought civilization. Often they were civilization bringers. So there's so much about them in almost every culture in the world, if you go back far enough, that it just makes you wonder if there could be one or two around, or if
right.
they really are representing, something real that we don't understand.
Well, and you had mentioned that there are people trying to get the Bigfoot or the Dogman into mainstream biological teaching, and dragons is one of those things that I've been fascinated with from a very young age, as well as Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, all of them, hence why we have a show now. One thing that I would think is, if we can ever capture one of these things, if these are actually corporeal creatures, even a carcass that is undoubtedly a carcass of something other than what you mentioned as the Montauk beast and the Texas blue skin dogs, who were supposed to be or what people thought were the chupacabra, but were written off as coyotes that had mange, and the Montauk beast was I believe, pit bull that had been floating in the water. That's what it was explained as anyways. If we can get a body of these creatures, or a live creature, if they, like I said, if they are corporeal and not spirit in form, I have no doubt that, that part of biology would be opened up, and cryptozoology and biology would merge together.
Right. Well, the Texas blue dogs actually were discovered to be a combination of coyote and red wolf that did not have mange, but actually had a mutation or adaptation for hairlessness, which I discovered is not a terribly unusual or impossible mutation for mammals in general. It happens more often than you would think. And if you go to my blog, which is on lindagodfrey.com, I have a WordPress blog, and one of my most recent stories is about the Hillsboro, Wisconsin hairless creature, which turned out to be a raccoon that had that same sort of mutation, and it kind of explains that well. But yeah, I do hear what you're saying about having a body would be really nice to confirm just about any of these things. And then yet, you read a book like Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is one that I really respect because of the caliber of the scientists and reporters that they had there. And on different occasions, both the owner of the ranch and the scientists that had set up later to study these things saw what they described as some sort of light structure that resembled a window or a tunnel, and the rancher actually saw what might have been a living creature, but it looked like a triangular black shape that flew out of this hole where he could see blue sky in the background, flew out of the hole, flew into the night sky of his world, and zoomed off. And then the investigators saw also a tunnel-like structure, and some sort of black furry creature came out of it. So you do have to wonder, maybe these things that are flying around in the sky, maybe it's easier for them to fly out and just keep going. I don't know. I just think there's such a world of possible explanations out there. It's almost dizzying.
Right.
And you can find. I mean, some maybe 20 years ago, all of these things like tunnels in the sky and whatever might have been harder to accept, but the discoveries our physicists are making are coming along at an alarming rate. And almost every day you see they figured out some other new correlation or possibility for quantum physics or some permutation of that. And of course, it's unproven whether things can come in or out of them. But people who are really much, much smarter than I am are postulating that yes, it's possible for us to have other worlds or universes attached to or correlative to our world, or perhaps we're even sharing a world that's right here with our own, but it's just at a slightly different vibration or vibratory rate. and those creatures are there, and every once in a while there's a weak spot where they can get through. So you just have to wonder. And something like a dragon, where it's got this ancient worldwide cultural history, that to me seems like that would be more likely to come from another time or place. And I'm not again saying that they do, but as long as you had brought it up, I think if you're looking for something that's not normally around here. I mean, at least, the upright dog things, we do have canines that size on Earth here. Bigfoot, we're not supposed to have an upright primate, but we do know that that's a possibly logical thing, biologically speaking. But when you've got flying dragons, something that shouldn't be around here, that's a whole different can of worms.
Right. Well, we do have one more comment here from Cameron. Cameron, go ahead.
All right, so you guys were talking about dragons, and so I wanted to bring in some information about that. So if we're talking dragons, we're going to have to be talking some sort of large lizard. The most common ones known are the dinosaurs. And from my research, which is less than I'd like it to be, we're not very many, if not none at all, dinosaurs that, would have resembled a dragon. Because when you describe a dragon, so many different types of dragons from so many cultures. But what seems like you're talking about right now is a winged one, and winged dragons, winged dinosaurs with 4 legs and a long tail, they just haven't been dug up yet because, the tail is
although we are digging up new dinosaurs every day. It would surprise me if they found one.
I said not dug up yet.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, but for my information right now, as it is, depending on the culture of dragon, if we're going European dragons, that's probably nothing because they're 4-legged, they have wings, and we just haven't dug anything up like that yet. If we're talking a dragon with 2 legs and wings, that's more possible because a lot of the pterosaurs had 2 legs and wings,
Right. And actually, Cameron, you're really agreeing with my point is that the upright wolves and the Bigfoot are biologically possible with what we know to have on this earth, whereas the dragons don't seem that way. They're part of this group that doesn't make sense for biological organisms that we know to exist now, or even in the past. Really, I mean, they could be coming not just from another time, but from another place, if the witnesses are to be believed.
Right.
Yeah, of course, because people lie a lot.
Not a lot, but once in a while. Once in a while, I do find one of those. Yep.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yep. All right. Not to cut you off, Cameron, but we are getting close to the end, so I wanted to give you, Linda, a chance to tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your book, all that good stuff.
Thank you. The easiest place is just to go to lindagodfrey.com. You don't need a www, just lindagodfrey.com. You'll find my blog. There's a bio and books page where you can find a complete listing of my books with links. There are some other goodies on there. There's kind of a basic page about the whys and wherefores of the dog man with FAQs and some background. So that's probably the best place to go. You can also find contact information to report a sighting to me. And I'm especially interested if you know of some type of creature that's been seen in relationship to one of these tunnels or portals or wormholes, whatever you want to call them, or with a lot of light phenomena. I'm really interested in that sort of thing right now. So that would be the best place to go, and that lindagodfrey.com will just take you to whatever you need then.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. You've been an amazing guest.
You're welcome.
You've had a lot of information specifically on a lot of the creatures that me and Eric find fascinating, in this side of the paranormal. So thank you for being on, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure anytime.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
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 All right, folks, that was Linda Godfrey, author of American Monsters. You can find her book on Amazon, any Barnes & Noble or bookstore around you, as well as her website, lindagodfrey.com. Next week, we have Demonic Possession versus Mental Illness with our special co-host, Justin Fall. As well as the following week, we will be doing a show on death worms, which is one that, again, me and Eric have not covered, so it'll be dig in some research here.
Hold on. What was it called?
The death worm? The Mongolian death worm.
The Mongolian death worm.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I don't always know what the next topic is for a couple weeks ahead. Occasionally I do. Most of the time I do, but occasionally I don't. So when he says things, I'm just like, what? It's never such a thing.
Well, the following episode after that is Shadow People. So that one you will know.
Yes.
But I kind of figured you didn't know. I figured you didn't know the death worm, so
no. I mean, I'm thinking Tremors, probably something like that.
It's actually similar to that creature that's in that movie. Yes.
Okay. Cool. I can
All right.
with that.
We've got about 2.5 minutes left, so I wanted to give you a chance to promote your movie again before we head out for the evening.
The Reveal. This is a movie I am producing and directing. I'm in pre-production right now. I'll start filming it in fall, this upcoming fall, September most likely, possibly October. Check it out. It's on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/The Reveal Movie. You can go to facebook.com/Truth Radio. You can also find videos of the review as well. There'll be plenty more info next week, and I'll share it. And we're running out of time now. But check it out, like it, and share it with friends. Thank you.
All right, folks. On that note, we will be talking to you guys next week with our special co-host, Justin Fall. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric.
Have a safe night, and we'll talk to you guys next week, folks.
Peace.